The Carver curse is no more. 10 years to the day after Iowa State's last win in the Forbidden City, the Cyclones have claimed victory once more in Carver. For anybody counting, the last time that the Cyclones won in that disgusting town was Fred Hoiberg's last year at the helm in Ames. Since then, both Iowa State and Fred Hoiberg have gone through 2 coaching changes, so it's been a while. The win means that Coach TJ Otzelberger broke that barrier on his second try, one that Steve Prohm never once succeeded in doing. The game also felt close, even though the team out east held double-digit leads multiple times, and there's a couple of reasons for that. First, the average margin of victory in the Cyhawk men's basketball game over the last 6 games was 20.3 points. They've all been blowouts, mostly in favor of the home team, with an exception of when Prohm had that atrocious 2-win season that ended up getting him fired and replaced with Otzelberger. Secondly, because we actually come back and won the game, and we only won it by single digits. But Otzelberger has been showing signs of greatness as a coach in an era where the old guard of elite coaches such as Coach K, Roy Williams, John Beilein, and Jim Boeheim are retiring, and Bill Self is getting closer to that point in his career. Being part of a great coach is being able to consistently beat your rivals, and with yesterday's win, Otzelberger is now 3-1 against the team out east. Today is Friday, December 13th. I'm Matt Menson, and welcome to the Cornfield Sports Pod. No Blake today. You just get me going solo. So we're gonna try to get you a good amount of good content here, but this might go a little bit quicker since I don't have him to bounce stuff off with. But first of all, before we get to Cyhawk, there was another game here in the last week that Iowa State played. It was kind of a meaningless game. We won it 100-58. That was against Jackson State, who is still currently winless on the year. So there really is not much to take away from this game. And that's usual with these pay-to-play games. There hasn't been much to take away from any of them, whether it's, IUPUI or Mississippi Valley State earlier in the year. The games that mean something in the non-con are those power teams or from those, mid-majors that actually have some semblance of pedigree. That win against Dayton that we had, the A10 conference is a better mid-major than a lot of the other ones that we, end up playing against. The MEAC isn't putting up good teams. The A10, though, they'll put up tough teams every now and then. A few years ago, they sent Richmond to the NCAA tournament, and they upset a number 2 ranked team out east. So, and that was the Garza team out east. So that A10, they put up some good teams every now and then. We got that win against Dayton earlier in the year. That's the kind of non-conference win that means something. Winning against Jackson State like we did, it doesn't really say all that much about how we're doing. We outplayed them in every single stat except for free throw percentage, and admittedly, this is probably our team's single weakest point, is that free throw percentage. We are only 76% from the stripe on the season as a team, so we're missing 1 out of 4. Not a good look here to be missing 1 shot every other trip to the line. And if we want to be, the power broker in the Big 12 this year, that number needs to go up. And right now we are in the prime position to be that power broker in the Big 12. Kansas has 2 losses. Houston has 2 losses. Baylor has 2 losses. Arizona has 2 losses. We're sitting here with only 1, and it happens to be to the number 2 ranked team in the country. So we're sitting in a much, much better spot than anybody else in the Big 12 is, and the Big 12 has not been looking as strong as it's supposed to be looking as we enter conference play. Iowa State needs to take advantage of that, but we got to make sure we're prepared to do that, and we got to polish off these rough spots on our team, and we need to do it now. We've got 2 non-con games left to do that. But before we get to talking about that here, we need to talk about the big kahuna, the one that I opened the show with, the win versus the team out east, The Carver curse is broken. 10 years to the day after Iowa State last won there on December 12th, 2014. That was the George Niang blew a kiss to the student section game. And since then, we had not been able to win in CHA. No more. We are able to win again in CHA. It's the first time we've won there in any sport, actually, in 10 years. Women's basketball, still not doing great there. They haven't won there in like 20 years now. Same deal with wrestling. We'll get to women's basketball later. Wrestling, we've already gone over the most recent Cy-Hawk. That was a show or two ago. But this men's game, this men's Cy-Hawk game, it really was the story of two halves that were just absolutely polar opposites. They were nothing alike. In the first half, the team out east was absolutely better than us. We struggled mightily to get a stop on defense. We allowed 44 points in the half, which is really, really out of character for a TJ Otzelberger coach team. I understand our defense this year hasn't been quite as strong as it has been the previous few years. But my goodness, we let them shoot anything. The team out east, they went 7 for 13 from 3 in the first half. And they were getting open looks, but they were making seemingly everything from there as you watch that game. They lit it up from beyond the arc, and those add up very quickly. And a lot of those 3-point shots came very early in the game, which made things even harder. They build a quick early lead. They get out to that jump, and you're already feeling gassed 6 minutes into the game. It's a tough thing to recover from, but our team did a good job keeping their composure by the time we got to the second half. But that 3-point shooting was not the only issue that we had in the first half. All too often we were not giving help down low. There was a number of instances where I saw Deshaun Jackson or Joshua Jefferson or Brandon Chatfield basically watch team out east players make a drive to the bucket, and they stood there and watched them go in for an easy layup. They didn't go in and give help. They didn't try to contest the shot. They didn't try to take a charge, nothing. So giving them way too many easy layups, huge problem. And then I just harped on this a little bit, but not contesting shots. It wasn't just the layups that we weren't contesting. It was pretty much everything in that first half and into the beginning stages of the second half as well. But those mid-range jumpers, if they pulled a mid-range jumper, it was not going to be contested. And they figured that out as they got into the game, especially later into the first half. They figured out, we can pull up from the elbow, and there will not be a hand in our face. The number of times that I watched Keyshawn Gilbert get pulled up on at the elbow, and he didn't contest the shot, he just stood there and watched it, was very unfortunate. So shots that could have been more difficult became very easy for the team out east. And, if we get a hand up and we get a hand in their face, some of those shots are not going to fall. And then we're not sitting as far behind going into halftime. But, and I saw Keyshawn doing it a lot, but it wasn't just one player. And it wasn't just one player for them that was hitting him either. It was a collective effort by both teams. And that allowed the team out east to get those shots that got them, 44 points in the first half. But that's something that Iowa State's going to have to fix going forward into Big 12 play. We can't let that kind of thing happen again, because there's going to be tougher teams in the Big 12 where if we start making those mistakes, they're going to put a gap on us that we can't come back from. But thankfully, this was the team out east. They're not as good as a bunch of these Big 12 teams, and we were, in fact, able to come back on them. Our offense in the second half just went absolutely nuts. They really picked up some steam. 52 points in a half is impressive against anybody, even the aforementioned Jackson State. Putting up 52 points, that's on pace for 100 piece. That's a lot. And to do that against a power conference team, especially when you're down, really says something about the composure of your team in big moments. The team dropped 8 3-point baskets in the second half. They only dropped 3 in the first half. So we started lighting it up from range. There was an early one from Taman Lipsey right coming out of the gate. And from there, the floodgates opened from beyond the arc. Curtis Jones was leading the team from behind the arc. I believe he was 5 for 8. Just absolutely outstanding. Yeah, Curtis Jones was 5 for 8 here. We did an effective job of getting to the bucket. There was a couple possessions in a row where we got Deshaun Jackson wide open under the bucket. Got big monster dunks from him. And the momentum really swung Iowa State's way because of that 3-point shooting and the good looks inside. We weren't forced to depend on a lot of bad jumpers, mid-range type stuff. And eventually it did result in Iowa State coming back and taking the lead. Their first lead in the game, though, came with 3:05 left on the game clock. And we had opportunities to do it before that, too. But we had multiple opportunities where we were within one possession or we had even tied it up. But we would either give up a bucket on the next possession and sell the momentum, or we would get a stop and then go dry for a little while and, let the team out east build up a 4-point lead, a 6-point lead. And it was starting to become a pattern, and you're just like, oh, no, is this going to be one of those games where we keep pushing it until the very end but we just can't get over the hill? And no, we did, in fact, get over the hill. And Nate Heisey made sure that we were going to get over the hill. He put it in the bucket that got us over the hill. And once we took the lead, we never gave it up. The team out east never got it back. The team out east never even tied it again from that point. And that was part of a stretch late in the game. It was an 8.5-minute stretch where the team out east missed 14 of 15 shots. They went absolutely stone cold. They could not buy a bucket. And, if you're a fan of that other team that's watching this show and you want to say that they choked the lead away, well, yes, they did. There's a lot of fault to the team out east for blowing that lead in the manner that they did. They played very badly late in the second half. But that's no discredit to how good the Cyclones played. Again, 52 points in a half is impressive against anybody. It doesn't matter if that's one of the worst teams in the country. Being able to put up 52 points in a half means you have to be scoring incredibly fast. And that requires your team to be playing good and the other team to be playing bad simultaneously. You can't have just your team playing bad isn't going to get my team 52 points. My team playing good isn't going to be enough to get my team 52 points just in a single half. Iowa State played fantastic ball in the second half. They absolutely kicked in the teeth. But the team out east, they played garbage ball in the second half. And part of the reason that happened, Iowa State did a fantastic job of distributing the ball and getting lots of players involved. We had 5 players in double figures, and it pains me to do it, but I'll give credit to the team out east. They did a good job of distributing the ball too. They actually had a good offensive night. Scoring 80 points is a good night against a power team, especially the third-ranked team in the country. And they had 6 players in double figures. But Iowa State here, Joshua Jefferson, he was in double figures. He also secured a double-double with rebounds and tallied 7 assists as well, so he was not far off from a triple-double. Deshaun Jackson had double figures. Taman Lipsey had double figures. Curtis Jones, aforementioned, 5 for 8 from 3. So that's 15 points on its own right there just from behind the arc. And then he added an additional 8 points to that as well for a grand total of 23. Nate Heisey scored 10, including that shot that took the lead. But abnormally quiet, noticeably not on this list here, is Milan Momcilovic. The team out east made a very strong effort to keep him shut down, and that's probably part of the reason why we were slow from the arc to start the game. Most of the shots that Milan attempted were very difficult shots to make. Those fadeaway shots that he's actually pretty good at, but are still not a particularly high percentage shot. Milan attempted a lot of those. Keyshawn Gilbert also he had a rough shooting night. He was 3 for 13 or something like that from the floor. Not characteristic of him. It didn't look like there was any sort of health issues or anything like that. He didn't look like he was hurting. Nothing looked sore. So it's just an off night for Keyshawn. Nothing to be concerned about really going forward. I don't think he'll be back. But also worth noting here, this game was the first true road game for the Cyclones. The only non-home games before yesterday were in Maui. And that included that loss to Auburn. That's also where we beat Dayton. We took them down to the wire, or they took us down to the wire, I should say. And then we beat the tar out of Colorado. But importantly here, it takes away the question of how this team can do outside of Hilton Coliseum, at least for now. And, playing outside of Hilton Coliseum, that best win that we have outside of Hilton Coliseum is that win against Colorado. We beat them by 27. Oh, yeah, guess who our next road game is? Colorado. We get to go play them in Boulder for our first road trip of the conference slate. So who better to draw for your first conference road game than a team that you already know you can beat the tar out of because you already did it once? You don't have to be afraid of this team. Their environment is likely not going to be particularly great because they're probably a little bit deflated about the idea of having to play us again, it's really important. And being able to get wins on the road against some of these teams that are not supposed to be as competitive in the Big 12 is going to be really important because the Big 12 is full of tough road environments than the ones that, CHA provides or that Colorado provides. When you're thinking tough venues in the Big 12 to play, obviously Hilton Coliseum plays to our advantage, but not anybody else's, that's for sure. The Marriott Center, nobody likes playing BYU when they're at home. Allen Fieldhouse is a legendary facility. The Fertitta Center is a tough place to play lately with how Houston has been playing. Although they've taken a couple losses this year, so maybe they're not quite as good as they were the last couple of years. Foster Pavilion's a tough place to play. If you gotta play Baylor there, they got it's a smaller facility, but man, they really pack the crowd in tight, and they are really on top of you there. Bramlage Coliseum, the Purple Kitties call it the Octagon of Doom for a reason. Like, that place gets loud. That place gets really, really loud. It is a tough environment. But luckily, ISU does not have all of those locations on their schedule this year. The ones I named, they've got Allen Fieldhouse, the Fertitta Center, and Bramlage Coliseum on there. But luckily enough, they managed to avoid the Marriott Center or Foster Pavilion this year. We get to play BYU and Baylor at home only. And then, as I mentioned earlier, with this win against the team out east, Iowa State is entering the Big 12 play. They are going to be in the driver's seat. We are probably, if you were to run preseason rankings again, or not preseason rankings, if you were to do a poll of the coaches right now, the same way that they do during the preseason, and predict a favorite, you would probably looking at Iowa State as the favorite to win the Big 12. They've been consistently the best. Our only loss, again, was to the number 2 ranked team in the country, who's probably got a Wooden Award winner in Janai Broom. So there's nothing that's too crazy to worry about there. But before we start worrying too much about conference play here, we do still have a couple games in Hilton Coliseum in the non-con that we got to take care of business. The only one in the next week here is going to be Sunday. It's going to be against the University of Nebraska-Omaha. It'll be the first of 2 more pay-to-play games before the Big 12 play begins. The Big 12 play will begin on December 30th at Colorado. But this game against UNO should be a good game to ease up on the starters a little bit, avoid injury risk before Big 12 play starts, because Big 12 play is physical as heck, and you want to make sure that everybody's as healthy as possible going into that. You want everybody at full strength, because how healthy your team is a advantage in Big 12 play. But that game against UNO, that will be Sunday at noon, Hilton Coliseum, or if you are not physically able to make it to the game, and that's your only excuse, by the way, then you can watch it on CBS Sports Network. Or if you want to watch it on CBS Sports Network, here's what I suggest you do. You set it to DVR. You come to Hilton Coliseum. You watch the game in person, and then you go home and you watch the game again. And since you DVR'd it, you can skip through the commercials. That's the way to go right there. All right, we do need to talk about football, because we did play a game in the last week, and I know we want to bury it from our minds, bury it in the depths of our mind and kind of forget about it. Basketball's been doing good. It was 6 days ago, but we did lose the Big 12 championship to Arizona State. I want to pull something here from a piece here. One drive into the game, and all cylinders seemed to be firing for the Cyclones. Iowa State was looking good after a sustained drive had allowed them to take a 7-3 lead over Arizona State. Then everything fell apart. Iowa State's offense sputtered on every drive until garbage time. Cam Skattebo was harder to get a hold of than a greased watermelon. Consecutive turnovers effectively put the game out of reach of even the wildest of comebacks early in the third quarter. Arizona State looked like a team that belonged in the Big 12 championship game and in the college football playoff. Iowa State took on the role of the pretender, while Arizona State grabbed the role of the contender. That's from my piece on the Big 12 championship game. You can find that one on the Crowd Noise. I'll put the link in the description for that. But at the 6:30 mark in the first quarter, everything began to spiral totally downhill for the Cyclones on offense, also on defense, but the offense was a very notable progression of things just progressively getting worse. But here's how the next 6 drives, or the next 6 full drives anyway. I'm not counting the one that ended the second half. But this is how they ended for the Cyclones. Field goal. Okay, at least we still scored. Then the next one, missed field goal. Okay, we at least still got down the field. We might not have had any points, but the offense is still moving. Punt, fumble, interception, fumble. Yeah. Just utter deterioration. With those 2 fumbles, ball security technique was pretty bad. One of the things that you're supposed to learn how to do as a running back in order to maintain ball security when you got to go through, those fields of people, you got to claw, you hold the ball in your arm, you got to claw on like that. And that helps keep the ball from getting ripped out. That helps it keep it from getting punched out. And I was not seeing our running backs doing that. I actually have not really seen our running backs do that much all year. And this time around, it really came back to bite them. This team that barely fumbled the ball all year, fumbled it twice in 3 drives, and the other drive was an interception. So we were scoring more points for ASU than we were for ourselves, basically, at that point. And by the time we scored again, Arizona State already had 45 points, and we were solidly in garbage time. So it didn't matter what we scored at that point anymore. You can basically call this a final score of 45-10 Arizona State. I know we ended up scoring 9 more points in garbage time. They really didn't matter. The decision-making by ISU was pretty bad in this game. Sama struggled to read holes and just outright missed a lot of them. This is something that I've been talking about through the entire season. Hansen has been better about reading holes than Sama has been either of the last 2 seasons. And I really think that Hansen deserves that starting job at this point until Sama's decision-making as he's choosing his holes and where he's going to run is going to go better because those zone reads are just not his forte. Tackling form. Tackling form was also pretty bad on our end, but it's been bad all year. We have had a handful of good running backs exploit us on it. Devin Neal exploited it on us. R.J. Harvey exploited it. And now Cam Skattebo has also exploited it. We're going to struggle dealing with running backs if we are trying to tackle by grabbing at the shoulder pads or at their shoelaces. Because if you go high, you have no leverage. And if you go low for the feet, well, the feet move fast and you outright miss a lot. And that's what happened a lot with Iowa State. We struggled very much to get him on the ground. And Skattebo's a good running back, don't get me wrong, but we could have slowed him down some if we had been tackling correctly. Instead, you put atrocious tackling against a really good running back, and it made him look like he was covered in butter. He absolutely made us pay for that. You got to get low on the body. You got to wrap up. You got to secure the ball carrier and get him to the ground, and that's just not what we were doing. So the defense in this game was just a complete and utter collapse. Skattebo claimed 170 yards against us, and that contributed to a total by Arizona State of 248 yards on the ground. Sam Levitt had a few runs that put some numbers up. Even Jeff Sims got in there and had some. But it was an atrocious day. Arizona State knew exactly where to attack us. They knew exactly where our weakness was, and they exploited it time and time again. And we did not adjust to it because any adjustment we would have made would not have fixed the fundamental tackling issues that were present. Most of Skattebo's yards were yards after contact. So you're not really going to fix that by throwing, someone in their secondary after him. The guy that's getting there has to make the tackle. When he's breaking 2 or 3 tackles right at the start of every play, it seems like committing extra guys to stopping him is not the answer. Getting the guys that are already there to do their job is the answer. And because of that ground attack and how potent it was, Arizona State was able to effectively use it to open up the pass game. This is a point of the game that Iowa State really needed to be in control of. And because Arizona State was so dominant in the ground game, we had to relinquish control of the pass game to try to gain some semblance of control back in the ground game. And the result of that was, even without leading receiver Jordan Tyson playing for the Sun Devils, Arizona State was able to hit big play after big play after big play, home run ball after home run ball, over and over and over again. The Sun Devils, they averaged 18.3 yards per catch. And once they were up by 14 points, it kind of looked like our secondary was just checked out for the game. There was a distinct lack of effort over and over and over again. If you watched Jeremiah Cooper in coverage, he was constantly behind wide receivers, constantly getting beaten one-on-one. And he's supposed to be our best guy. And the rest of our D-backs were not faring much better. But I think that that's a testament to the lack of composure and the will that our team had in this game once we got down. Because we could have gone into the second half with the same kind of composure that we did under a similar deficit that we had in the game against the team out east back in September. But instead, we looked more like the team that got bowled over by Devin Neal and Jelon Daniels. Our defense just didn't show up. And the defense really, the defense really was reminiscent of that game. Arizona State beat us in the same way that Kansas did. Our offense, on the other hand, was much worse, actually. The offense at least still showed up in the Kansas game. They didn't down in Arlington. So, yeah, if I go back to that point that I made here, that I made in the article that I wrote on Sunday, we looked out of place. We looked like the pretender. Arizona State looked like the contender. And that's what happened when we played the toughest opponent that we have all season. Remember, we avoided the teams in the Big 12 that actually ended up being good. In the regular season, we did not play Arizona State, BYU, or Colorado during the regular season. Those are the teams that were in the tie for first place in the Big 12. So the haters said Iowa State couldn't do it, and they were correct. Honestly, great call from the haters. That leads us to the Pop Tarts Bowl versus Miami. That'll be December 28th. Ought to be an interesting matchup. A lot of strength-on-strength type matchups. That's assuming our defensive backs start covering receivers again. But that Cam Ward and the Miami receivers against the Cyclone secondary, it ought to be entertaining as long as our secondary shows up. But with that game being a few weeks out yet, we'll do a full preview in 2 weeks. Like I said, that game will be on December 28th, and I believe it'll be on ABC. Women's basketball. They played on Wednesday against the team out east. We'll get to that in a minute. I have less good things to say about that game than I did about the men. That's for sure. The ladies, they were able to put up a quality win, or I shouldn't say quality win. It's Central Michigan that they won against. They beat them. They played high-quality basketball against a low-quality opponent. So take that, interpret that how you will in terms of how quality the win is. We put the gas pedal to the floor in Q1. We put up 31 points on the Chippewas just in that first quarter. And we had 3 separate players who outscored Central Michigan's leading scorer. For reference, Central Michigan's leading scorer was Jada Mosley. She scored 11 points. They had nobody else get over 10. They had 2 players who scored 10 points, and then Jada Mosley was 11. Not a good scoring day for the Chippewas. Meanwhile, Iowa State here, Audie Crooks put up 19, Addie Brown put up 18, Emily Ryan put up 12. So basically like 3 players on our team were better than Central Michigan's entire team. And that just goes to show that beating Central Michigan doesn't really prove anything. CMU is just another outmatched team. But it does mean that ISU can get all of their players meaningful playing time in these kind of games. Actually, we only had 1 player who had single digits in minutes played. That was Lily Taulale. She had 6 minutes on the court. Everybody else had more than 10. And no ISU player had more than 25 minutes active in that game. So good game to utilize depth on the roster and get everybody some playing time. We had another development between that game and the game against the team out east on Wednesday. We actually found this out on Wednesday prior to tip-off. Kenzie Hare will be out for the remainder of the season. Apparently, she's been dealing with a hip injury that is just becoming too much of a problem. Other methods of dealing with it have not been effective enough, if at all. So, opting out now means that Hare is still able to exercise her medical red shirt and retain that year of eligibility. And Hare is currently Iowa State's third leading scorer. So it means that we're going to be missing a crucial piece of our offense going forward. And it's going to require players like Emily Ryan and Ariana Jackson and Kelsey Jones to step up. And I think Kenzie Hare being out and having been announced out that day likely made a difference in their game that night against the team out east, because they lost it by 6 points. 75-69. And I'm not going to say that was the only factor in this one. Iowa State has had a trend of taking their foot off the gas in the fourth quarter this year. And, when you're playing against pay-for-play teams and you're up by 37 points, I don't really have any issue with that. The issue occurs when the game is tight the entire time leading up to that point. So here's how it kind of broke down here. Iowa State scored 3 more points than the team out east in the first quarter. In the second quarter and in the third quarter, we had the exact same scores. So we needed to press on, and we needed to press hard in the fourth quarter, and we did not. We let up, and the team out east floored it. And they cooked us in the fourth quarter. So when you want to, and the other thing too, when you want to beat tough teams, you have to be able to win in multiple ways. The best teams are versatile. They adapt. We failed to do that, especially late in the game. We didn't adapt to the situation at all. You got to win at the free throw line. ISU certainly did not win at the free throw line. We shot 6 for 16 at the stripe. Our team's free throw shooting this year has just not been good. It's a similar storyline for both the men and women this year. For some reason, our free throw shooting is just down, and that's got to get better before conference play if we want to be winning those important conference games. Another thing, too, we have to be able to run multiple plays on offense. You have to win with offensive variety. Our offense got stagnant late in the game, and that's largely because we kept running the same play over and over and over again. It was just post up, post up, post up, post up. And what ended up happening was the team out east was able to figure it out. They adjusted. They covered Audie really tight, and they forced a lot of turnovers when we tried to throw it in because we kept trying to force that throw when we really should have stopped trying to force that throw. And that's what led to us turning the ball over 21 times as opposed to only 9 by the team out east. And again, another point that we should have been able to compete with, but we chose not to, win behind the 3-point line. If you're shooting hot from deep as a team, lean into it, especially if the inside looks are being effectively taken away, like in the fourth quarter they were. Take what you're given. Especially if you're shooting hot, and if you're given where you're shooting hot, you absolutely got to lean into that. We were shooting 46.7% from 3, and yet we only attempted 15, while the team out east attempted 25. We were shooting significantly better than they were. The team out east made 8. We made 7, but the team out east attempted 10 more than us. Not good at all for us. More utilization of the 3 ball would certainly not only have scored us more points, it would have opened up that post play for Audie. But because the point of that is you gotta pull the defenders off of the ball here, and that's something that we really did not do. We should have been better about that. We were not. So being stubborn on offense, because that's the best way to describe it, we were stubborn. That likely cost ISU the game late. And, you look at the offense being stubborn, and what does that result in? It results in most of the scoring coming from very few players. Audie Crooks had 31 points because we kept feeding her the ball. The ball was pretty much always going to Audie. So, yeah, she put up a lot of points. Addie Brown, only 13, and 9 of her points came from three-point shots. So she was not a presence in the front court. That's a problem. Emily Ryan, 9 points. She's got a lot of experience. We need to be leaning heavy on her. She was not up to the task in this game. I don't know why. Could have just been a rough night for her. She had a lot of turnovers, too. That was very uncharacteristic of her. A lot of bad reads. That was very uncharacteristic of her. Either way, in the big games like this, you need her to step up, and she wasn't there. Only 9 points for her. The rest of the team had only 16 points. Everybody combined. Everybody was getting minutes, remember, and they only combined for 16 points. That's our entire points total right there. 31, 13, 9, and 16. So that really, really shows just how one-dimensional the Cyclones were in this game. And that's got to change. That's got to change. We get one game to figure that out where we're gonna end up winning it anyway. We get a game versus Eastern Illinois. There's not going to be a lot to analyze for this game since it's another pay-for-play. K-State beat Eastern Illinois 90-43, so we should be looking at something comparable to that. But this is a game where we need to be thinking about reintroducing variety back into our offense, locking down on defense, taking threes when we're shooting well. And for goodness sakes, practice free throws. Practice free throws here in the next week. We need to be much, much better about free throws because we were 6 of 16 or something like that from the stripe in this game. Again, it was really, really bad. 6 for 16 at the stripe. We lost the game by, 6 points? 6 points. All we had to do was shoot 60% of the ones that we missed. And we tie that up. 70% and you win it. That's not that much to ask. So that's a really difficult slot that we find ourselves in there. Gotta pick that up. But that game against Eastern Illinois, that will be Sunday. That'll be at 5 p.m. in Hilton Coliseum. That's where you're going to watch it because the only other place to watch it is ESPN Plus, and ESPN Plus broadcasts are just kind of inferior. So no discredit to our house production team. Love those guys, but they just don't have the equipment or the resources to do the kind of stuff that the linear networks, when they're doing their full linear broadcasts, can do. And they really gotta, and Iowa State, we really gotta get ourselves prepared here. Use that Eastern Illinois game, get it prepared, because on Tuesday we are playing at UConn, and there's a little bit of an asterisk next to the "at" on this game because this is technically listed as a neutral site game, but the fact that it's listed as a neutral site game is a bit deceiving, because the venue is just at another town in Connecticut. So it's essentially a home game for UConn. The environment will be very friendly for the Huskies. And UConn stands to be dangerous after they took a recent loss to Notre Dame. Now they've got something to prove again. Now, we're fortunate enough that UConn has another game between then and when we play them. They still have a game against Georgetown. So, optimally, their frustration will be taken out on the Hoyas, and we will catch a bit of a break and get normal UConn, which is hard enough to deal with. Because we know the kind of impact that players like Paige Beckers are going to bring to the table. She is one of the best players in the country. Not having her best year right now, but it's early. She's got time to keep boosting those numbers up. She's got time for some of these other high flyers to also fall down. So, but right now, Beckers is averaging 19.6 points a game. She's 56% from the floor. She's tough to deal with. I'm not entirely sure how Iowa State's best going to match up against her. We're probably looking at putting Emily Ryan against her, most likely on defense. That's probably what the matchup is going to look like most of the time. I think I would like to see Kelsey Jones matched up against her. I think Kelsey Jones is our best defender, but I don't know how much we're going to see of that. I don't know how much time on the court Kelsey is going to get. And the other difficult matchup that we're going to have to deal with, freshman forward Sarah Strong. She has been phenomenal so far this year for UConn. 16 points a game, 7.6 rebounds per game, so she's gotten a couple double-doubles in there. And she shoots even better than Beckers does from the floor at 56.5%. She is going to be real hard to keep locked down. She can shoot the three, too. She averages about 2 3-point buckets per game. So Addie Brown is going to have her work cut out to keep Sarah Strong locked up. But that game will be on Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. That'll be on Fox Sports 1. We got a little bit of wrestling to talk about here, not too much. Cliff Keen Invitational. We placed 5th at this one. This is the hardest. This is the most prestigious regular season wrestling tournament there is in college wrestling. But the top 4 teams in this, the ones that placed ahead of us were Oklahoma State, Nebraska, Ohio State, and Virginia Tech. Not super shocked about any of those. We had 6 Cyclones earn spots on the podium. Evan Frost got 2nd. Jacob Frost got 5th. Anthony Echemendia got 4th. Would have liked to see him do a little bit better. Panero Johnson got 7th. Would have liked to see him do better. Evan Bachman got 6th. And Christian Carroll placed 8th. We're still our team as a whole is going to hurt in team scoring from not having guys like Younger Bastida being totally healthy right now, not having Casey Swiderski being totally healthy right now is really putting us in a bit of a bind. And we also didn't see success from MJ Gaitan at this tournament, and we need to see more from him too. But we're looking at a duel coming up here where everybody on our roster has got a good chance to win against North Dakota State. This will be the Humboldt High School game. North Dakota State does not have a single ranked wrestler on their squad, so it's not like they have any world beaters out there that we can't beat. And DSU is winless so far on the season in duels. Iowa State, on the other hand, has not lost a bout in Humboldt in 3 years. We shut out Wisconsin last year, and 2 years ago we shut out Grandview. The last team to score on us in Humboldt was Purdue 3 years ago. So North Dakota State, that game will be, or that duel, I should say, that will be December 15th, 2 p.m., and good luck watching it because if you don't have tickets to go, because that's going to be on Flow Wrestling. Yeah, follow the Cornfield Sports Pod on Twitter at CSportsPod. You can find me at SFMattISU. Blake would be telling you right about now that you can find him at BlakeAttack1846. Tap the follow button on Spotify, plus button on Apple. We're also available on Amazon, CastBox, and Good Pods in audio format. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube and Rumble. Turn on notifications. And for Blake Peterson, I'm Matt Menson, and this has been the Cornfield Sports Pod.